Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Chairperson, honorable ministers present here today, Your Excellencies, High Commissioners and Ambassadors that are present here today, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I do have a PowerPoint presentation and I see it out there. And first of all, I would like to say that it is an honor and I'm very happy to be here. And I'm glad that the organizers will give FARA this opportunity, to give this keynote address, to this august gathering. Apparently, the title of my presentation is Growing Africa's Future. This was given to me by the organizers, and I would like to say that we in Africa very much welcome this title because we believe that it is very important, that we should begin to look into the future. And I believe that as we determine the challenges facing agricultural development in Africa, it will be very irresponsible for us if, as we deliberate on those issues, those challenges, we do not look into the future. So my presentation today would look into the immediate future and the long term. So I'll be talking about 2015 to 2050. 2015 because we're supposed to achieve the Millennium Development Goal by the year 2015. And another issue that I would like to stress in my presentation today relates to the smallholder farmers, because they constitute the majority of the farming community in Africa, and they contribute something like 90% of Africa's agricultural production. So with that in mind, I would like to, With that in mind, I think I've skipped one. Okay, this is the outline of my presentation. I'll give the context for agricultural development in Africa, but I would stress my talk on Africa's development vision and vision for agriculture, which you all know will be centered around the CAADP, the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program. And then I'll go to talk about the CAADP achievement, lessons learned over the last 10 years, and a new strategy under the CAADP that is being promoted by the African Union Commission and of course, NEPAD. NEPAD is the New Partnership for Africa's Development. Then I would have some message for the new center, the Food Security Center, and then I will talk about FARA's role in the entire process. Where am I supposed to point this? Is it? Okay. I would like to say that Africa is richly endowed. I believe that we are all aware of this. The continent is the second largest in the world. It has huge landmass, and I think it's been mentioned today already that this continent holds 60% of the uncultivated arable land of the world. And it has huge natural resources, mineral resources such as gold, diamond, bauxite, rutile, etc. Huge water resources. And of course, the population of Africa is growing. It is known as the young continent, because about 44% of our population are around the age of 20 and below, so we have active working population. But the Human Development Index for Africa is the lowest compared to any other region of the world. And I would like to stress on the graph that you see on the screen. And I would like to say that in the 80s, you see that Africa is comparable to the other regions of the world in terms of poverty, people that are living below the poverty line. But after that, we see that the other regions of the world made considerable progress, but Africa continued to remain stagnant. You know, and I think that this is a situation that we need to reverse, because today I think it's been mentioned that about a third of our population remain poor, you know, and these people go to bed every day, they wake up hungry every day, and I think that it is disheartening that a land with plenty, a continent with lots of resources, should be seeing this kind of poverty in its land. And but there is evidence that transformation is possible, and that transformation is taking place, I think, at least in some countries. You know, and we believe that it's not just in Africa. We believe that agriculture has played a key driving role in transforming countries that have become industrialized in the past, whether it's Europe, the Americas, USA, and Canada, and Japan. You know, first of all, had to increase their agricultural productivity. And we're seeing the same trends with the BRICS countries, China, India, and Brazil. So agricultural productivity is very important, you know, for growth. So poverty reduction has stagnated in Africa, despite the fact that our economic growth is doing very well. You know, we've been able to maintain high GDP growth rate, you know, for about a decade now. And it is disheartening that this growth does not actually translate, you know, to lifting people out of poverty. Only a small group of people in the continent are actually benefiting from this growth. And if you look at the people that are in that circle of poverty, about 70% of them earn their livelihood through agricultural activities. So if we are able to improve the outputs from agricultural activities, improve profitability of our agriculture, we should be able to lift these people out of poverty. But we still believe that agriculture offers the highest poverty reduction effect compared to other sectors. And I think studies carried out by the bank, you know, showed that agriculture is more effective for about 2 to 4 times, or it is 2 to 4 times more effective, you know, in getting people out of poverty. And it was the same study also mentioned that for every 1% increase of crop yield, we can leave 2 million Africans out of poverty. But if we look at productivity growth across regions of the world, the blue line, you see that Africa is lagging behind all other regions, and the productivity gap tends to be increasing with time. And I think that, again, I've used this word before, but I would like to use it again, that this is really unacceptable, and Africa should do everything to close that gap. And one good thing, or several good things, but one that I would like to mention here is the fact that the Food Security Center, you know, in their initial studies, I noted that for the past 15 years, adoption of technology stands at something like 35% in Africa. But compared to other regions of the world, we're talking of excess of 80%. And we believe that we should be able to close that gap if we spread these technologies within Africa so that we get to the same level like the rest of the world, 80%, 90%. On top of that, give external inputs like fertilizers, etc. So the potential to increase production and productivity is high in Africa. But what have we done over the years? Up to now, Africa believes that we need to expand the area under cultivation to increase production. And if we look at what is happening in Asia and Latin America, but more so in Asia. Asia quickly went into intensification, and they were able to increase production. Latin America started like Africa, I think something like the red line there, expanding area, realized that that was not profitable, and they went into intensification, and boom, their yields went up. So basically what you see in the picture that you have there is what happens if you continue expanding your area under cultivation to increase production, you know, and so that is degradation, very environmental friendly. So this is an approach that Africa must try to stop. And I believe that the moment, like what is happening in Rwanda, as Africa goes into intensification, we will see increased performance. Now, Africa's development vision, political leaders came together in 2001 and came up with that vision. And the vision you can read on the screen, but it says that a prosperous continent free of conflict in which all our people can fulfill their potential, a continent that participates effectively in the global economy on an equal footing. If I should paraphrase that vision, it is talking of sustainable economic growth, it's talking of peace, and it's talking of dignity. You know, and I believe that we can achieve those things by, first of all, trying to eradicate poverty, ensure attainment of food security, and sustainable economic growth. Our political leaders said that each country should come up with something like 7% should attain 7% GDP growth rate over a protracted period of time to be able to achieve that. And I think that that is something that all of us should bear in mind and try to see how we can get to that level. And we believe that agricultural performance is very pivotal to realizing that vision. Again, the vision for agriculture is very well articulated in the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, which was approved by our heads of states in 2003, and in fact that came out of the creation of NEPAD, the New Partnership for Africa's Development, in 2002, and NEPAD, recognizing the importance of agriculture as the driving force for economic growth, came up with the CADEP. And the CADEP actually calls for attainment of 6% agricultural GDP growth. You know, and at that level, we're supposed to try and see how we can attain food security, play a dynamic role in agricultural markets, not only within the continent, but also with the international community, and ensure that smallholder farmers are integrated into that market economy. And then it calls for African countries to become net exporter of agricultural products, for there to be equitable distribution of wealth, you know, so that if you are not producing and the food that you want to eat, you have the money to buy and eat the type of food that you want to eat. It calls for us to play a strategic role in science and technology and to do everything to judiciously utilize natural resources, but conserve the natural resources as well. But the CADEP is a continental framework that improves the planning process. Rather than people working in isolation, it brings the team together in a given country, in a given sub-region, at continental level to come up with their compacts. And it allows for the development of quality investment plan. It calls for strengthening and alignment of policies and policy design to support agricultural development. It also calls for strengthening and aligning institutional capacity, you know, for competitive delivery of results and impact. So the CADEP is a framework, it's not a program. And CADEP is changing hands. The last 10 years, CADEP model was built on, pillars, 4 pillars that you see on the board. I'm not going to read it because I believe that my time is, I still have some time, but it's built on those 4 pillars. And with those 4 pillars, you see the one for agricultural research, technology, dissemination, and adoption, and capacity strengthening that cut across the others: land and water management, market access and infrastructural development, and of course, food security and poverty reduction. CADEP is going to move on to something else, but I would like to say that the achievements in the last 10 years have been tremendous. 40 countries out of the 54 countries in Africa has adopted the CADEP process. 30 have developed or signed their compact strategic plan for agricultural development. 23 has formulated and developed their investment plans. And 11 have received funding from the Gulf. Now, that is the Global Agriculture Foods Security Program, created after the L'Aquila Declaration in 2009 and the G20 Declaration in 2011, where they put fund in a basket to support countries in the developing world, but those in Africa that has developed their compact and, of course, their investment plan. 11 countries received over 430 billion US dollars, an average of something like 40 million US dollars per country, and they are today implementing their investment plan. Another major achievement I think I've mentioned is the inclusiveness in the development of our compacts and in the development of quality investment plan. Another major thing that came out of the CADEP is advocacy for private and public sector investment in agriculture, and also improved coordination and alignment within countries and with development partners. Lessons learned. CADEP is a framework. It's an advocacy document, it's a political document, it's a technical document. Is that it promotes transformation of agriculture and allow for inclusiveness in the way that we do business, greater coordination in the way that we do business. But after 10 years of planning and planning and planning, it is time for implementation. And so we're moving into a new CADEP, a new strategy for CADEP that has been released by the African Union Commission and also NEPAD. But they took several issues into consideration. The first one, the increasing population in Africa, is what they took into consideration. Today, our population is at 1 billion Africans. In another 40 years, it's going to be, 30 to 40 years, it's going to be doubled to 2 billion, excess of 2 billion Africans. We need to increase our agricultural activities, improve production and productivity to be able to feed that people. And again, I mentioned the issue of young population, but yet we need to find jobs for those people. And as people become affluent and more urbanized, their eating habits also change. So the issue of climate change is taken into consideration because it's aggravating problems of drought and diseases, insect pests, floods, etc. And the current financial and economic crisis, the funds are no longer there as they used to be. The emergence of the BRICS as economic powers, and of course globalization, getting information out. Yes, okay, 5? Thank you. I have 5 minutes, so I have to rush this presentation a little bit, but these changing habits, it's due to rapid urbanization and income growth. So we see in Africa, mainly in capital city, but elsewhere in Africa, we see shift towards processed foods and high-value products, foods, vegetables, fruits, etc. And we see shift in the skilled manpower or the intervention from the public sector to the private sector. For example, last 40 years, the public sector was much more active in supporting agricultural activities and involvement in agricultural activities. Next 40 years, we're going to see processing, packaging, distribution taking place, and the private sector will be much more prominent. So, we would like to talk a little bit, just take 1 minute to talk about the new CAADP strategy, building momentum, the CAADP momentum. And here, the strategy actually outlined everything that was in the old strategy, but gives more visibility to job creation, to resilience, to competitiveness, and to regional and global integration. But if you look at the 3 key priority areas, strengthening and aligning institutions, policies, and leadership, knowledge and knowledge support, financing and investments in agriculture. Those are 3 priorities that were mentioned in the FAP, the Framework for African Agricultural Productivity, that was developed by FARA and its constituents and endorsed by our heads of state in 2006. That's a big foresight for FARA and its group, to be able to get those things out way ahead of the CAADP bringing it up. But generally, it shows that research has a key role in each of these areas. And again, if we take, but I believe that research has got more comparative advantage under knowledge and knowledge support. And if we look at knowledge and knowledge support, you see the 4 areas that are listed in this new strategy. All of them, FARA, my institution, can play a key role. We've been given leadership to develop the agricultural science agenda. And the agricultural science agenda is looking at alignment of the CGIAR, Madam Chairperson mentioned the CGIAR today, alignment of the CGIAR CRPs with the investment plans, country investment plans, and regional, sub-regional investment plan. And I think that this is a key thing that what is popularly known now as the Dublin process, it's working on. And I'm glad that David Nelson is here, and probably he might throw some light into this later on. I'll very quickly talk about, give a little bit of message to the food security program. First of all, we hail it in Africa. We think it's a very good program. And we see that it has aligned very well with the CAADP process. It has involved the stakeholders, whether it's the AU, the African Union Commission, or the regional economic communities, FARA, and its constituents. All of us have participated in the process to come to development of the strategy. Now, it will need long-term financial plan, just like the strategy which runs for 10 years. It should complement existing institutions. I believe it should focus on GAP. Madam Chairperson talked about nutrition. Post-harvest technology is another area that probably we should look at. And again, the support to adoption of technologies is very much welcomed by the African community, but we see similarities between this program, some similarities between this program and the G8's new Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition. And I think that there will be need for strong collaboration of these two, to make sure that our efforts complement each other. And at the same time, the center might want to think of coming up with a target at the end of 10 years. What actually do we want to achieve? And I want to give 2 examples. I have 1 more minute, or? Yes. I want to give 2 examples. The first one relates to the CAD, the Coalition for Africa's Rice Development. And they gave a target that within 10 years, we should double rice production in Africa from 14 to 28 million metric tons. And what did we see a few years after that? Because countries have come up with their strategies and things like that, rice production increased by 18%. And the new G8, the new G8 Alliance for Food Security and Nutrition, said we're going to lift 50 million people out of poverty in 50 years. So those kind of catchy things, I think that we should think about, getting that. And again, resilience is becoming very important, and we should give our position on that. Capacity strengthening should be looked at based on the shift that I mentioned earlier on, private sector involvement, greater involvement in agriculture, but capacity strengthening should cut across the capacity pyramid. Policy issues are very important, and I believe that we're going to look at that. My organization, FARA, I will just cut that short, and then I will say that FARA coordinates, facilitates agricultural research for development in Africa. FARA, the secretariat is small, but the forum is very big because it comprises almost everybody involved in agricultural research for development in the continent, whether it's from education or it's from extension, from the private sector, et cetera, et cetera. We give our full support to this program because we think it's a very good program for Africa. And we will continue to play our coordination role to make sure that Africa contributes significantly to the success of this program. We look forward to the continued dialogue and consultations, that will enable us that will ensure that there is continued buy-in and of course, ownership of the program. This is our program. Our program means that it is owned by all of us. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.